Thank you, Lisa. And thank you all so much for being here. It's so wonderful to see so many of you joining this program. So, really, thank you. Again, my name is Serena Jain. I am the mindfulness specialist at Cancer Wellness Center, where I've had the great pleasure to be for almost 3 years now, running mindfulness programs and teaching. And it's just been wonderful. So, I'm very excited to be here today to teach all of you some really great skills and educate you about mindfulness and how it can help with anxiety. So I'm going to open up a deck and begin sharing. Okay. Alrighty. So again, today's workshop is about how do you manage anxiety with mindfulness, through the skills of mindfulness. Today we're going to learn what is mindfulness, what does it actually mean? What is anxiety and how does it show up? Like in the body? How does it show up in the mind? How does mindfulness come along and how does it help us when we're feeling anxious? We're going to do a practice today. We're going to do a bit of a breath work practice and some mindful eating. So if you have some morsels of food, that would be great. I'll share a little bit of research about all this, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about why we should practice mindfulness to help us when we're feeling anxious. What are the benefits? I'll share with you a little bit about different mindfulness programs, different exercises, and then we will have some time for Q&A at the end. So again, thank you all for being here. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's start here with learning. Well, what does mindfulness actually mean? I know this word is kind of a buzzword. It's in newspapers, it's in magazines, it's on TV. We hear about it a lot. And it's really, I think, useful to learn, well, what does it actually mean? So mindfulness, as defined by John Kabat-Zinn, who is kind of known for bringing mindfulness from the Eastern world to the Western world at the University of Massachusetts Medical School back in 1979, is when he created a stress reduction program there to help patients that were coping with chronic pain. And so he defined mindfulness as the awareness that arises when we are paying attention on purpose in our present moment without judgment. And I like to add in with kindness and curiosity. So that non-judgmental piece is really important. As humans, we are constantly judging. You know, this is too hot, this is too cold. I don't like that person. I like that person. I wish it was this way. I wish it was that way. You know, there's a lot of judging going on. So how can you show up to whatever is present without that judgment as much as possible, noticing the judgment and not necessarily buying into it and showing up with presence and actually becoming more kind and more curious rather than with judgment. So it's helpful to understand what the opposite of mindfulness is to be able to understand what mindfulness is. So the opposite of being mindful is when we are on autopilot. And that really means when you're kind of just reacting, you're acting in your habitual kind of ways that you've been conditioned to react. And also maybe you're doing things yet you're not necessarily like wanting to do because you're just kind of acting out of autopilot. And it's when we're kind of not so self-aware and maybe we're a little bit more reactive. So here are some examples of what happens when we are on autopilot. And if you ever noticed that have you ever said something you wished that you could take back? And I'll raise my hand. You know, I usually ask everyone to raise hands, but if you ever notice that you wish that you had not done something, you wish you could take it back. That's a way of being on autopilot. Have you ever done something that you've later regretted? Have you ever noticed your mind is constantly thinking about the same thing over and over, over and over, and it won't stop? Have you had trouble falling asleep because your mind is just kind of spinning, your body feels restless, maybe there's jitteriness? And then lastly, have you had trouble focusing or spacing out? You know, maybe there's a sense of just fogginess going on. So these are all ways in which we can experience autopilot. So that's the opposite of being mindful. Because remember, mindfulness is all about being aware in the present moment with kindness and with curiosity. And so why should we do mindfulness? Well, mindfulness really helps us because it helps us to come off of this autopilot, this habitual kind of reactive way that we can all become. It's a way for us to notice what's going on in the mind, and to be able to quiet the mind and really to be able to pay attention to what's actually true in the present moment within us and around us. Lastly, mindfulness gives us the ability to be able to know, hey, I'm on autopilot and I need to get off and come back to this present moment. Or, hey, I'm reacting from some previous conditioning or habitual patterns and I need to come back to this present moment because later I might regret what I'm about to do. So, mindfulness is really, really a useful skill if we cultivate it. Okay. Now, it's important for, I mean, since this workshop is learning about how mindfulness can help us with anxiety, I think it's also very important for us to learn, well, what is anxiety? What is it really? So anxiety is an emotion characterized by feelings of tension in the body and also worrying, ruminating thoughts. Usually those thoughts are typically about uncertainty about a future that's unknown. You know, that's usually what's happening when we're feeling anxious because we're not sure what's going to happen next. Physically, anxiety shows up in the body as these body sensations. You may feel your heart beating really fast. You may notice that your blood pressure spikes. You may start to have rapid breathing or just, feeling like you're hyperventilating maybe. Maybe there's more sweat produced in the body. Maybe you're just feeling trembling or you're weak in your legs perhaps or tired. So there's a lot of ways that anxiety can present and maybe even some other symptoms like stomach pains or any kind of like or even a sudden headache. So anxiety shows up many ways as not only mentally but also physically in our bodies. Okay. And again, anxiety is really caused by when we're worrying about a future and fearing a future that hasn't happened yet. And when that kind of worry, that kind of fear, or that kind of distress can becomes overwhelming, and it actually prevents us in daily life and engaging in our daily life, our routines and things we have to do, anxiety can really become detrimental. It can become a real problem. So how does mindfulness come in and how does it actually help? So again, mindfulness is awareness, and it's an awareness that we all actually have innate to us. We're all born being mindful. So we all mindfulness is something that we all already have, and we can just learn to kind of cultivate it. And so how does it help us when we're feeling anxious? What it does is it comes in and again, it helps us to reduce anxiety by helping us to slow down. Because when we're anxious, we're speeding up. Our mind is racing, our body's kind of jittery, right? So really it helps us to become quiet and still and slow everything down. So that's the opposite of being anxious is slowing down. It also, when we're being mindful, we also learn to focus our mind on the present moment rather than thinking about past regrets and ruminating or future fears and ruminating. When we are mindful, we're cultivating our ability, which we already have, to live in the present moment versus stuck in thoughts about what if this happens, what if that happens, or what if this that happens, then that will happen, then that will happen. Worries and what ifs, right? We've all experienced worries and what ifs. So focusing awareness on what's happening right now is what we're doing when we're mindful. It's about who we're with. What are we feeling? What are our thoughts? What are actions are we taking? What is present for us? What is there in my environment? And that is how we come to be able to focus our attention on something in the present moment by being mindful. And whenever we notice that we're not present, we can return our attention to this moment whenever the mind wanders, which is another product of becoming mindful. As you start to cultivate mindfulness, you'll start to notice, oh, my mind is, in 10 years from now, thinking about something that could happen. Or, oh, my mind is reliving some memory. I need to bring it back actually because this is the only moment that really is this one now. So it's the ability to become present, and it's also the ability to notice when I'm not present and bring myself back. So that's a really, really useful skill. And then lastly, when we are, how mindfulness helps with anxiety is we're able to observe experiences without judging and without getting stuck. And even something like, oh, I feel anxious. With as much as we can show up with mindfulness and say, hey, anxiety is coming up for me. I don't have to judge it. I don't have to, dislike it or like it. I can notice it. I can allow it to do its thing. And then I can also notice how it passes away. So as much as we can, showing up with a lot of kindness towards ourselves for whatever we're experiencing, and then coming back to this present moment by allowing whatever we're experiencing to be experienced. Because we all know the more we push something away or cling to something being a certain way, the harder it becomes to deal with it, right? So letting go, it helps us to this come to this ability of being able to accept and let go. Okay. So, in essence, mindfulness is really the opposite of anxiety. Because when we're anxious, we get trapped in the mind with those ruminating thoughts and emotions. And when we are mindful, it's a feeling of spaciousness. It's a feeling of becoming more free because it allows us to experience and accept our lives as they are as much as possible by staying present without rehashing the past or worrying about a future that's unknown, and also with that element of kindness and curiosity. Kindness, which is really, really important, that non-judgmental piece and the kindness. So what happens then is when those things come up, when that anxiety comes up, mindfulness can replace worry and anxiety by helping us to focus on what's actually going on, what's actually concrete in our present moment. And we can do that by really we can do that as early as today. In fact, when you are done with this workshop, you can start to practice mindfulness. So I'll tell you how. You can begin to do that by focusing on the experience that you're in through your sense doorways. So what am I seeing in my eyes? What can I see around me in my environment? What am I touching with my hands? What can I smell through my nose? What sounds am I hearing in my environment? What are some leftover residual tastes in my mouth, perhaps from a meal I just had, or what am I tasting now? And then lastly, also being able to accept whatever it is that is happening for me, both internally and externally. So the external situations that may happen in life, not only in your environment presently, but also whatever situations you're dealing with, and then also how you feel about those situations internally. So mindfulness is really, really super useful and can help you with so many things. So today we're going to practice together a mindful eating exercise. And I like to use mindful eating because mindful eating or eating is something that we do every day. All of us, we have to eat, right? We have to all eat in order to survive. Eating is essential. And eating is one of these things that we can easily go into autopilot on, which is the opposite of being mindful. How many of you have ever eaten in front of the TV? Maybe you've eaten while you're driving. Maybe you're eating on the go, or maybe you're eating in front of your iPhone or screen or smartphone. Maybe you're eating just while you're doing 10,000 other things, right? So when we're eating, how can we use our senses as a vehicle for present moment awareness and mindfulness? And when we do that, we can recognize that autopilot in our daily activities like eating. So what we're going to do is bring some real present moment awareness to eating, and how can that help us become less anxious? So today we're going to go into a practice here in a moment. We're going to do a little bit of breath work, and then we're going to go into doing a mindful eating exercise together. So again, eating is something that, especially when you're anxious, perhaps you forget to eat, or maybe you eat too fast, or maybe you eat too much. Eating is one thing you can control, and you can slow down your eating and notice how it impacts you as you do that. So that's the point of that exercise. And we're going to begin here with doing a bit of belly breathing together. And then I'm going to take you into a mindful eating exercise. So let me just explain to you real briefly, what is belly breathing? So belly breathing is an exercise where we deliberately focus our attention on the breath at the belly. And when we do that, it will really help us with that anxiety. It can help with our mood. And it does that also by increasing oxygen to the body. It'll decrease the heart rate and blood pressure, and it'll stimulate the immune system. And again, what it means is we're going to start to focus our breath at our belly area. So I'm going to move into the next slide here, because we're going to begin to do belly breathing together, and then we're going to go straight into a mindful eating exercise. So for anyone who's on the screen, that's fine. And if you're not, that's fine too. We're going to start here now. I'll invite you all to come to close your eyes if that's comfortable for you, or you can just lower your gaze down to the ground. So we'll go ahead and we'll start this exercise now. So again, inviting you all to come into a posture that will be comfortable and inviting you to lower your eyes down to the ground if that's okay with a soft gaze. Or we can also close the eyes completely. So just noticing how you're feeling today in this moment and doing whatever would be most supportive to you. And then as you arrive into a position for a belly breathing mindfulness exercise, go ahead and begin to notice. Drop your awareness now into the physical body. And go ahead and notice all the many points of contact your body is making with the chair, the ground, the cushion beneath you. And go ahead and maybe bring the attention down to your feet. So let's start here by noticing our feet in touch with the ground. Feeling the feet and the soles of the feet making contact with the ground. And then from the feet, coming up to noticing the legs. So noticing the backs of the legs supported by the chair beneath you or the cushion, wherever you're sitting. Coming up to notice the tailbone, the sit bones, the thigh area, the belly. And then from there, coming up to noticing the chest and the back. And really taking a moment to really feel these parts of the body and everything that is supporting them underneath you, beneath you, and behind you. From the back, bringing the attention to the chest, the shoulders, the neck area. And then bringing awareness down to the arms, both of the arms. So the shoulders, the elbows, the forearms, and the hands. Noticing with the hands, perhaps they're in your lap, or maybe they're down by your sides. So just taking a moment to feel into, sense both of your hands and even the individual fingers of the hands. And then from the hands, starting to notice back up, taking your way back up to the arms, coming up to noticing the shoulders, the neck, the face, and noticing the head. And then also within the face and the head area, just noticing all the parts of the face, the chin, the lips, cheeks, the nose, the eyes, forehead, ears, area between the eyes, eyebrows, muscles around the eyes, and then the head. And really just taking this next moment here to ground yourself within your physical body, dropping full awareness into the body seated here or lying here. And then if you haven't already, go ahead and begin to notice the breath flowing and moving through the body. And I'll invite you to place one hand on your chest and one hand on the belly. So let's place one hand on the chest and one hand on the belly. And now just start to notice what the breath feels like at the chest and under the hand that's on the belly. So just noticing the breath at the chest and the belly. And then here, also see if you can identify where are you feeling your breath more in this moment? Is it in the hand that's on the chest? Or the hand that's under the belly, on the belly? Just noticing, where do I feel my breath more? And so now I'll invite you to place both of your hands on your belly. So both hands can come down to the belly. And I'll invite you to inhale through your nose and let's expand the belly out. And then as you exhale through the nose, slowly contract the belly to the spine. So we're going to inhale, expand the belly. Feel the belly expand. Exhaling, noticing the belly gently contracting to the spine. And so if your hands are placed on your belly, you should feel the movement here. So we want to inhale, and as we inhale, we're going to put the air, all the air into the belly, expanding the belly. And then on the exhale, slowly contracting the belly. So really feeling that belly expanding and contracting. And I'll invite you to just keep breathing in that way, inhaling, expanding the belly. Exhaling, gently contracting the belly. So I'll ask you to think about a baby now as you do this. Think about a time you've ever seen a baby breathing. They breathe from their bellies. Notice how the baby's belly expands and softens as it breathes. And we were all born breathing like this. So we're really emulating that experience right now. Breathing in, expanding the belly. Breathing out, gently contracting the belly. That's all you have to do right now. If you notice your mind wandering, just noticing, being mindful, bringing it back to the feeling of the breath, expanding and contracting at the belly. So breathing in, expanding the belly, and breathing out, contracting the belly. And we'll just do a couple more breaths now like this. And now I'll invite you to count. So let's take a breath in for 3 counts. So breathe in, expand the belly for 3 counts. And then on the exhale, breathing out and contracting the belly for 6 counts. Breathing in for 3 counts, expanding. Breathing out for 6 counts, contracting. Using the belly and the breath as an anchor to this present moment. Breathing in for 3 counts, expanding the belly. Breathing out for 6 counts, contracting the belly. Good. Taking another couple breaths like this as we come to the end of our belly breathing practice. Breathing in for 3 counts, expanding the belly. And breathing out for 6 counts, contracting the belly. So you can think about your breath as an anchor. Imagine there's a ship out on the bay, and the ship may move from side to side with the wind, just like your mind may have thoughts. But because that ship is tied down with an anchor, that ship will ultimately, it's going to stay put. So just like that ship has its anchor, you also have your breath. And we can use our breath as an anchor into this present moment whenever we notice the mind is anxious or wandering or in the past or in the future. So it's a really helpful tool to be able to lean on. Breathing in for 3 counts, expanding the belly. And slowly exhaling out for 6 counts, contracting the belly. I'll invite you now to gently allow your hands to rest in your lap or down by your sides. And just take a moment to notice how you feel. And then noticing, pausing for a moment, noticing how you feel, how is the body, what thoughts are present for you. I'm gently inviting you to open up your eyes And we're going to move now into a mindful eating exercise. So again, mindful eating is a practice where we're going to use our senses as a vehicle for coming into the present moment. And again, this exercise reminds us that we can go into autopilot in our daily activities like eating. And how will all this help with the anxiety? We'll talk about a little later. So let's begin here. So I invite you to pick up whatever morsel of food you've brought with you today for the exercise and place it in the palm of your hand like this. So whatever food item you have, go ahead and place it in the palm of your hand. And for the point of this exercise, I ask that we don't label the object. So imagine you're seeing this object for the first time. You've never seen it before. So go ahead and look at it. I invite you to bring it up to your eyes and start to look at and examine the object. Start to notice, what do you see in front of you? You could bring it closer up to your eyes and just to get a closer look and notice. And then if your mind wanders around, just bringing it back to paying attention to this object. So with the other hand, I'll ask you to pick it up. Pick up the object and just really start to move it around with your fingers. You can start to feel it. Really feel it. Really continue to move it around with your fingers. And just notice, what are you noticing when you feel this object? What does it feel like? Now I'll ask you to bring the object to your nose. And start to notice, what are you aware of in your sense of smell as you bring the object to your nose? What is it that you smell now? And the reminder, of course, is if your mind wanders, bringing it back to the object, noticing what you can smell. And now, just for fun, we're going to bring it up to our ears. And just notice if there's any sounds as you bring it up to your ears. Any sounds. You might not notice sounds, and that's okay. You can also notice the sound of silence or the absence of sound. And then lastly, let's go ahead and place the object on your tongue. And then close the mouth. And before you bite it, start to maybe move it around in your mouth. Move it around. Notice what your taste buds are doing. What does your mouth feel like? Maybe there's an impulse to bite it, but just see if you can move it around. Notice what happens. Feel the sensations in your mouth. And then you can begin to take that first bite and really notice the flavor. Noticing the flavor and the impact of eating this way. What does it feel like? And we're going to do it one more time. This time I invite you to do the whole thing in silence on your own. So taking that piece of food that you have one more time, let's do the exercise again. We'll do it together in silence. So beginning by taking that piece of food on the palm of your hand. And I'm going to do it too, so you can just watch me if you forgot. And now just wrapping up on your second piece of food, go ahead and chew it if you haven't already. Really noticing the flavor. Noticing also how you're feeling, what sensations are present in your body, what thoughts are present in the mind. So mindful eating. These are just some questions which we'll have a chance to maybe talk about later, but what did you notice? What did you experience as you did this mindful eating practice? What is it like to be fully present for the act of eating? What side of the mouth were you chewing on? Did you notice? What notions, preconceived notions were there about the taste of your food item? I had a raisin based on past experiences of this food item. And how might this practice be useful to you? So go ahead and just reflect on these questions about mindful eating and these what we just did. So again, mindful eating is a practice you can do where you really use what is already part of your life and your body, your mind, your senses as a vehicle for becoming present. And it's a way for us to realize how much we live our lives on autopilot in our daily activities. And something we all do every day, often in a day, is eat, right? So, how can we become mindful when we're eating instead of being on autopilot? And what does it do to our system when we do? So, the research tells us, it shows us that practicing mindful eating has many, many, many health benefits. And for today's purpose, it really helps to reduce anxiety. It can improve with our emotional well being. And it also is useful when we are feeling anxious or stressed to help us cope with anxiety and stress. So I want to share a bit of research about mindfulness in general. So there was a research study done in 2022 at Georgetown University Medical Center, and it was done on the effectiveness of mindfulness for patients with anxiety disorders. So the study was done on 276 hospital patients on the East Coast from Boston, New York, Washington, D.C. So the patients were all randomly assigned either taking an 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction program or taking the antidepressant drug escitalopram, which helps with anxiety. And what they found was out of those 276 patients, 102 of them had completed the MBSR mindfulness-based stress reduction program, and 106 of them had completed their medication course. The MBSR program was found to be just as effective as that anti-anxiety drug, escitalopram, for the treatment of anxiety disorders. And this study is very recent. In fact, it was a groundbreaking kind of seminal study that I don't believe has been done before using that program. So just wanted to share that with you and advance the slides. So here is a little bit about, why we're here today, which is mindfulness and anxiety. There's many reasons, of course, why we should try using mindfulness and why we should cultivate it as a skill in our lives. And for anxiety, why we should try it. It helps to prevent anxiety and depression. When we're anxious, sometimes our memory can get, affected. It helps us to enhance our memory. It helps us to improve our cognition. It helps when we're feeling emotional with regulating. It's got a very positive impact on our brain and our immune system. It improves our digestion and circulation. It can help with fighting disease, decreasing blood pressure and inflammation, improving coronary artery disease. It can help with chronic pain and headaches, helps with our sleep if you're struggling with any sleep issues, relationships, helps you feel less lonely. And of course, there's many more things that are benefits of it. But for today's purpose, I'll leave you this list. Really, it just improves our overall well-being and quality of life when we start to practice mindfulness and make it a regular part of our lives. So if you're thinking about, all this stuff and like, where do I take a class or what should I do next if I want to start becoming mindful, my recommendation to you is to take a live class. You can do that virtually or in person, We offer them at the Cancer Wellness Center too, a live class with a certified teacher. So the teacher should be certified from some reputable source and preferably a live class. In these live classes, there will be an educational component. There will be a component of practice, which we just experienced, which is, of course, see for yourself. That's your data. That's your experiment. Is you learn, and you learn via experience, and you are validated through these experiences. There's also an element of sharing in mindfulness programs, of group sharing and individual sharing, where when the sharing happens, we end up realizing, oh, someone else is experiencing the same thing I am. I don't feel so alone. So that sense of common humanity is really useful. There's community support within that group. And there's also validation that, oh, I'm on the right track. Others are doing this and experiencing this, and they're also feeling this, so I'm on the right track. And then lastly, it helps you become accountable. You come back every week, you have homework to practice, you show up, you engage with your group and you say, oh, I did my practice this week, or I didn't do it. There's a sense of accountability. The last two things are you'll develop a toolbox full of different types of practices and tools you can use in different situations. Sometimes you need a different skill. Sometimes you need, a variety of skills. So you'll really learn a variety of skills, and you'll create a toolbox of different skills that you can use. And then lastly, I like to say mindfulness is dose dependent. The more we practice, more benefits we're going to receive and we're going to notice in our lives. Here are some practices that you may learn in a mindfulness program or a class that you take. We did two of these today, but there's so many, and this is just a very small list. There are many, 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 many types of different practices. And the nice thing about mindfulness practices is they don't have to be done while seated on a meditation cushion, for example. They can be done when you're eating. They can be done when you're walking. They can be done, in just practicing daily life routines. So you can actually start to cultivate mindfulness in everything that you're doing. It doesn't just have to be a formal practice. So here's a list of different things that, you might like to see or engage with when you go to these programs. And then lastly, before we go into open up for discussion, I'd like to just leave you with a few points here. So this is a practice that can really, really support us, and if we choose to cultivate it, to help us when we're feeling anxious, and also to help us cope, really help us cope with that anxiety. Because what mindfulness does is it shifts our focus away from that anxiety and all those anxious thoughts into the present moment. And it also helps us develop a sense of kindness towards anxiety, noticing that it's there and not necessarily working our energy to push it away, but yeah, hey, I'm feeling anxious and it's okay. And let me be with this anxiety as if it was, a friend, right? And then the next thing is, the research tells us that an 8-week MBSR course has been shown to be just as effective as medication to treat anxiety. I really recommend that if you're going to do mindfulness, please, please take a class with a certified teacher. That's the recommended way to begin, live in person or virtually, but with a certified teacher. It's really, really beneficial for us to develop a toolbox of practices. Because sometimes we may find I need to do a walking practice. I need to do a more movement-based practice. I need to, dance or something else. And sometimes we may find that I just want to sit and practice, do some awareness of breath meditation. So there's a huge variety of practices, and it's really great to have different ones to lean on when you need them. Lastly, mindfulness helps us to notice and accept the anxiety. When we're fighting it, we can remain stuck in it, right? And when we accept it, that, hey, this is actually, happening for me, we can begin to be more understanding, more kind, and invite more spaciousness into that moment and each moment of our lives. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is that this is a very, very supportive practice for your entire health and well-being, and really can improve the overall quality of life. So I want to thank you all so much for engaging today in the practices, listening to all this education about them, and coming to this workshop.